Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasul Kareem amma ba'du. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Every time, you just like to hear that same gag repeatedly. You just love the joke. Okay, the Londoners, man, why are we so tired? Shall we say that the salam got done? I heard your reply. Shall we give another go? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's a little bit better. Goodness me, man. I'm already going back with negative views of Londoners and everything. I need to go back and say something positive back up north, inshallah. So as we have on after Asr Salah, it's a sort of more of a contemporary discussion. We're just speaking to Maulana Sahab. It just feels like you're a hamster in a wheel. There's a period where you eat, there's a period where you sleep, there's a period when you're in the masjid, and it just goes around, so you forget which Salah is, what you're supposed to be doing. So it's alhamdulillah, it's a unique position to be in, alhamdulillah. So the topic of discussion is a quite broad one, and that is, what does it mean of being a Muslim in the UK? Okay, this was a colleague who felt it was an important thing to raise, where, for example, a person at home, a person in the workplace, a person in the community, how does that work out? Our arrival, for most of us that are maybe second or third generation immigrants, primarily came for financial reasons. So we made hijrah, but we made hijrah for financial reasons. Similarly, when you see now, whether it's in Sham or Afghanistan or anything of that nature, you see most migration tends to come towards the West. Very rarely do you see migration going towards the East. And we know there's wealthy countries in the Muslim world. You know, there's wealthy countries in the Muslim world building huge towers and has funding for all sorts of projects. But what you find is the Muslims, generally speaking, come towards the West. Now we can discuss the underlying issues for that. Why is that? Why would a Muslim leave a Muslim majority country and leave a potential area where they're a Muslim majority and end up coming to a country that does not profess their faith and has different views? So I think it's important that right from the outset, we understand the context that we are working in. Now, obviously, we've done this by choice. Nobody forced anybody to get on a plane. Nobody forced anybody to get on a boat in order to come in this direction. We did that by choice. We can explore the politics and the global situation as to what's happening in the world, which is causing refugees, which is causing problems in countries. But again, like I said, that's a conversation for another day. Our focus really is, what about being Muslims here in the UK? So therefore, with that premise and with that background, we live in what is referred to as a liberal democracy. That's the term that's given to the country that we live in, with some obviously Christian heritage. But as we saw in the last census, the amount of people who profess to be Christians is now below 50%. So arguably speaking, it's losing its religious identity, which sometimes might seem like a positive thing, but in reality it's not. Like we saw, for example, when the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba were happy when the Romans beat the Sassanid Persians, because the Romans were Christians at that time. And therefore this gave victory to the Ahli Kitab, the people of faith. So even though we have difference of opinions with our Christian brethren, like we have difference of opinions with our Jewish brethren, the key point is that they have some connection with a book, they have some connection with a revealed text, they have some connection with, what is right, modesty, honesty, fairness. When a people leave a revealed text and they start to explore what is right and wrong themselves, when they start to explore morality themselves, then that's when obviously issues arise. So as we're seeing now, generation after generation, we have different issues and different matters that we have to be equipped to deal with. Therefore, many of the times the fuqaha adopt something which I've referred to as the adaptive fiqh or the adopting fiqh. Why? Because depending on the control you have of your environment is how much, I was picking up a bit of a London slang there, didn't I? Environment, what? I need to go back. I'm losing my Yorkshire accent. They might not even let me in through the borders when I drive back up. The more one can control their environment, like alhamdulillah, we can control this environment. So there's certain things that we allow to take place here. There's certain things that we don't allow to take place here. Similarly, we have some authority, we believe, over our homes. So we are supposed to, as men in particular, as guardians of our homes, to take that level of responsibility. But when it comes to situations where we cannot control the environment, like our workplaces, like those situations where we might go to the colleges and unis and things like that, where we no longer can control that environment, now it is whatever we can do in order to minimize the disruption that this is causing us, and at the same time maintain our own principles. Obviously, it goes without saying that if we were in environments that we could control, then we would be safer. That goes without saying. Therefore, the first step a person needs to do is to make sure that whatever place of work they are in, whatever social setting they are in, that it is something which is akin and ties in with their belief system. You know, if you're going to put your hand in water where there's potential piranha there, then it is a risk. It is a risk that at one time, you know, something is going to bite. It is a risk. Now a person might say, but yes, but the fish are in there. I need to fish. How else am I going to eat? I have to take that risk. It's a calculated risk. That's absolutely fine. As long as the person is aware that they are taking that risk. Those of us who have some kind of scientific background, when we have to do an experiment, we do a risk assessment. We also do a COSH in order to determine the process and the chemicals that we are using, that are they safe to use, or what is the safest way to use them. The first thing you're taught is elimination. You eliminate the risk. You do not manage the risk first, you eliminate the risk. That's the first thing you do. Do I really need to use this piece of equipment? Do I really need to use this chemical? Do I really need to use this process? And if you can eliminate it, then eliminating the risk is always going to be safer. So similarly, we have to understand that your iman is the most preserved and valuable thing that you have. We may think sometimes it's our body. We may sometimes think it's our money. But it's actually your iman that is the most valuable. Unfortunately, for some of us, we may not hold that value to it. But that's what it is. It is the most valuable thing. There is nothing more valuable than your iman. As we've mentioned in previous discussions, the companions who would give their lives up but maintain their iman. This has always been a measure of believers, of preserving it, of maintaining it. So if we are in environments whereby this is going to be challenged, then we run that risk. We run that risk. So we need to walk in with both eyes open. Not think, oh, it'll be all right, you know, Allah is Ghafoor, Allah is Rahim. It's a case of saying, what steps am I taking in order to manage that? Similarly, if it's environments our children go into, and we know that this is what they're being exposed to, this is the types of things that they're reading, what are you doing to manage that risk? What are you doing? What other worldview are you sharing with your child? What other conversations are you having with your child? So that they understand that this is not the only view, there are alternatives. And one which I profess to, or my family profess to as Muslims, that this is the alternative. I need to be aware of it, I need to understand it. If we look at educational settings, a child could be in that environment for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. Now we know, unfortunately, as parents, we don't want to give 7 hours of our time to our children. But can we not give an hour? Can we not give 2 hours? Can we not ensure that those conversations that they are going through, because they will as they become adults, as they become adolescents, a lot of things that they're learning, it will start challenging what they were taught in Maktab. My Ustad teaches me this. I'm learning this. I've been taught this. They're talking about this at work. There's this going on. Now, obviously, We don't live in a bubble. There's legislation, there's legalities. So one has to be sure that any conversation that they're having, any discussion that they're having, is not putting any other issue at risk as well. It's about sensitivities. People will say, no, in a brash way, I don't care, I couldn't care less. I'm going to say what I want to say. But that also defies what a Muslim is. Because when a Muslim makes a covenant, when a Muslim makes an agreement that I'm going to abide by these laws, then he has to abide by these laws. We know, for example, when the Prophet ﷺ and the companions agreed the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, any Muslim who left Mecca and came to Medina against their guardian's wishes had to be returned. Had to be returned. Even though he had left polytheism, even though he had left shirk, he managed to find a way to escape, come all the way to Medina. The Prophet ﷺ would have to say, you have to go back. You have to go back. He was sending him back. This person has made hijrah. Come all the way to Medina. Come to the Prophet ﷺ. You have to go. Why? Because we don't break our covenants. We don't break our agreements. A Muslim's word is more valuable to what's written down. So therefore, if we are in situations that we agree, so whether it's the terms of employment that we've agreed to, the first thing you got to do is look at those terms of employment. You don't accept them, then leave. Walk away. But once you've accepted them, now you have to abide by them. Now you have to abide by them. Because it's not just, the thing is sometimes when we approach things in a very black and white kind of way. It's this or that. It's this or that. There are so many factors that play a part in all of these situations that we need to be aware of, that we need to take into consideration. So therefore, we are not left in certain circumstances. We know now, many people ask the questions, yes, but there's obviously gender interactions. I work in a place where there's women. What am I supposed to do? Well, the fact is that the responsibility of earning is placed, assuming it's a traditional setup, and this we'll talk about inshallah after Fajr, because we're going to speak about the ruku of at-talaqu marratan, and we're going to discuss relationships and also discuss how that all fits in together of a traditional setup. So in a traditional setup, not that many of us live in our traditional setups nowadays. In a traditional setup, the responsibility for earning is placed on the husband. That's in a traditional setup. So his job is to go out and earn a halal income. Now, as he goes to earn, he's going to go get jobs in places. He's in the UK. Remember, this people arriving in the UK has happened pretty much by default, not by design. It was not, no one came to say, oh, we're going to make dawah in the UK. That's why we're going. That's not why people came. Right? People came as they said, there's good jobs here. Remember, the Brits colonized much of the Indo-Pak, or what was referred to as India in those days. They colonized it. After colonization was destroyed, we had the Commonwealth. So basically all countries that had been colonized now became part of the Commonwealth. And there was a view that we were short of men working. So there was an offer to the Commonwealth that come work here, we'll give you jobs. So therefore many of our forefathers decided that seemed like a good thing. So they came for jobs. They had no intention to bring their wives. They had no intention to have children. They had no intention to establish there. This is a non-Muslim country. Why would we live here? But, they planned one thing and it so happens now we're established here. And now, as I said at the outset, we're now applying this adoptive fiqh. We're trying to survive as Muslims in this unique situation, and we're always asking the ulama to give us solutions. And they're trying their best because we live in a unique situation. And they're trying to give answers, and they're trying to maintain your faith, because their main aim is to maintain your faith. Their main aim is to ensure that we don't keep diluting and diluting and diluting and diluting until in the 70s we're at 95%, in the 90s we're at 90%, in the noughties we're at 80%, and then by the time we're in the 2040s we're at 40%. So by the time our grandchildren are learning deen, our elders do not even recognize the deen that they're practicing. Now we might sort of look back and think, hey, we might have gained considerably by arriving. But at what cost? At what cost has that been? So it is each person's responsibility. Now that he's aware of his context, now that he's aware of his surroundings, it is each person's responsibility to make sure, especially if he's a father, if he's a husband, it's his responsibility. He's been given all the tools. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him great, significant rights to be respected in the house. But he has to use that now in order to ensure that his boat of his family sails in the right direction. And he has to do whatever it takes to do to safeguard the iman. We know, when we look at our children, we do anything. We know the children can be, as it's described in the Quran, a fitna. Our families can be a fitna. Why? Because we will do things that we wouldn't normally do for the sake of the family. We will do things that we wouldn't normally do for the sake of the family. Where we would be very strict on something. If our mother or father asks us, we feel bad to be that strict now. We're trying to kind of look at it in a different way. So family can put us in those difficult circumstances. However, the case being that if we're willing to do that in a worldly perspective, then what about their iman's perspective? What about their faith? That which makes them a Muslim, which according to us are the people who will go to Jannah for eternity. So therefore, in this adoptive fiqh, then we have to minimize as much as we can do and avoid as much that's going to bring the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's going to go against the commandments of the Prophet ﷺ. And each person has to look at his own circumstances, what is in there. What can I avoid here? What can I not avoid here? Because the rules are clear. We all know the rules. We all know what Muslims can and can't do. Even a young child knows that. We cannot get no legislation because no scholar can change the deen. The deen is the deen. All a scholar can do is give some advice as to how to maybe navigate those circumstances to the best of his experience and his understanding of hadith, his understanding of the Quran, and his understanding of society. Trying to ensure. But he cannot guarantee that if I act on this, does that mean will I be saved and go to Jannah? He said, look, I don't know. That I can't tell you. Okay, that I can't tell you. Only what's in here is going to get you to Jannah. Only what the Prophet ﷺ is going to get to Jannah. This is my fiqh. This is my understanding. This is me trying to help you in these circumstances that you find yourself in. Now, many will say, yes, it's easy saying that, but haven't we seen these type of philosophies and worldviews even reaching as far as the East now as well? So, where is there that level of change? Because it's now a global view. It's now a world understanding. Absolutely, we get that. But we know as you move out of the urban areas, as you move out into the more rural areas, the villages, like where, for example, where my family is from, then there is less influence. There is clearly less influence. You can literally live in the manner that you choose to live in. Yes, if you obviously open up the door to mass media into the house, then of course, even then that information will get into your house. But you can lead a much simpler life. For those of us who've been spending time in the masjid for the 3-4 days now, we've led a much simpler life. All we have, like we're saying on the hamster wheel, is maybe eating sometimes, sleeping other times, and praying other times, and that's it. And as to when those times are, Allah knows best. Is it morning? Is it night? We don't know. Yeah. So it can be done, but obviously, realistically, in order to provide for our families, then there is a reason we have to do that. But again, sometimes we say, yeah, but we've got to provide, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. But it's also about how much we spend. Again, going back to our earlier generations, they arrived, couldn't speak a word of English. I know my parents arrived with one suitcase. Couldn't speak a word of English, didn't have a house, didn't have anything. They landed at my mum's brother's house in Sheffield. And as time went on, they get a house, even sort something out in Pakistan, go for Hajj, go for all these things. Lived within their means. Lived within their means. We work long hours, our wages would be 3 times, 4 times as much as what our fathers would earn, because they had manual jobs. And yet we still say, oh, it's not enough. It's not enough. Yes, but live within your means, brother. Look at the lifestyle you're living. You're living like a king. Yeah, you're living like a king, and then you're saying there's not enough. There's never going to be enough. It's a bottomless pit. You're just going to work and work and work and work and work, and you're going to lose, whatever iman is, and then you're going to reach to 60, 70 years old. Then you're going to look back, and then it's too late. Oh, look at my children now. My children don't respect me. They don't know anything about Islam. They don't know anything about deen. She's now more interested in doing this. He's now interested in doing that. Yeah, but are you happy now, brother? Sat in your big house with your big car and your fancy. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? Well, you've got that. So it's about priorities. It's about making sure that we prioritize those things. But again, I will repeat, it's always going to be adoptive fiqh. It's always going to be, sometimes I also use the word fiqh gymnastics, meaning like we have to bend in all sorts of direction in order to keep people within those broad boundaries of the Sharia. We'll go right to the edge. We'll go right to the edge, however far it can be stretched. But in reality, everyone knows what's in the book. Everyone knows what's in the hadith. They know what they have to apply by. They know what they do on a day-to-day basis. They know their interactions. They know who they're talking to. They know who they're exposing their children to. They know who they're exposing themselves to, what ideas they're exposing to. And we know, for example, the amount of money that goes into marketing, the amount of money that goes into advertisements. Those of you who are in the marketing world will know that there's big budgets that go into it. You know, we know McDonald's, for example, a very famous brand. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a very famous brand. It's everywhere, isn't it? Yet they still spend millions on advertising. Millions on advertising. Why? Why would you do that? Because they know it works. It influences people. It changes the way people think. So when we are being exposed to any type of material, then we are being affected even if we do not realize that we are. It is changing the way we think. We're dropping our guard. We're becoming a little bit more desensitized to something. And slowly, after time, more desensitized, until it becomes the norm. Until it becomes the norm. We know, for example, that the Sahaba, certain Sahaba, when they would see the Tabi'een and they would do something, they would say, you look at this act as though it's a small thing. We would consider this from the mubiqat, as in deadly sin. This was a generational change, living in the same country, under the same rulership. Imagine if a companion of the Prophet ﷺ came amongst us, would he recognize us that these people are also of the faith of the Prophet ﷺ? So that's the key thing. Adoptive fiqh. We're doing fiqh gymnastics. Now if a person can move to as clean a water as possible, would he not do that? If a person can move from the shubhat, the grey area, if he can move from anything, then of course that is what he should be doing. If he's in haram, then it's obvious he's in haram. Even then the ulama would be begrudgingly saying, look brother, maybe you should do something different. They won't even say, haram hai. This is haram, akhi. Drop it. Because they say, look, if I say this to this brother might utter something, it might become a non-Muslim or something. Let's give it a little bit easy for this brother. Let's manage him. Let's appease him. Gone are the days where it could be said in direct to the person's face and that person would immediately respond with, Barakallah feek, really appreciate you telling me that. I'm going to change. I'm going to change that job. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. In fact, that sheikh is hardcore, man. He's mutashaddid. What's wrong with him? We need those nice, fluffy, we were talking about the fluffy scholars upstairs. We need those nice, fluffy scholars that hug us and say sweet things to us. And is it like this, that emoji? Send love hearts to us. We don't need these hardcore, Taliban-esque scholars. We need love hearts and, you're great. Don't worry about it. Allah loves you. You all know Allah loves you. And that's it. Of course Allah loves you. But He's also going to punish. He's also going to punish. He's also going to take retribution. I was saying earlier upstairs, if you look at the Quran, as much as there is carrot, there is also a stick. As much as Allah SWT is encouraging people to do good by offering them Jannah and peace and security, there's also the other side of it as well, where He's warning them of Jahannam. And I said, nowadays it's not even stick and carrot. Where is he? I said, nowadays it's not even stick and carrot. Now is, what is it? Gajar halwa. So the carrot is not even the vegetable carrot that people sort of say, ooh, I don't really fancy that. We've even made it better. No, it's no longer stick and carrot. We're going to take that carrot, we're going to put some sugar in it for you, we're going to mix it up, and then we're going to feed you it. and there is no stick anymore. So it's about understanding that, and it's about engaging with that mindset. And as I said, at the end of the day, if a person has genuine ikhlas, if a person is sincere, and if a person turns to Allah, then Allah is not one who abandons anybody. He is the one who listens to and accepts the call that a person makes. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength and conviction in what has been said. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.